This talk picks up on the theme that we were just talking about, Français inclusif, designing a new diverse and inclusive French curriculum. Our speakers, Amber Hoy, Mariah Herbeck, and Brittany Gehrig. So the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. We're so delighted to have you here today. And what a session to follow up on. I hope many of you who are saying are French instructors, or at least interested in finding out about French OER materials. So we're going to talk to you today about our journey creating a new and diverse inclusive French curriculum. And before we get started, I thought it might be helpful to tell you a little bit about who we are. So we are a team of K through 16 French instructors, as well as an instructional designer. And I'll introduce you to our team. So, well, I'll let Mariah, she's here, so I'll let Mariah introduce herself if you'd like.
Sure, I'm Mariah Herbeck, and I am professor of French in the World Languages Department at Boise State. I'm also the French section head, so a lot of the decisions on curriculum go through me, but I really want to work as a team, and so this is why we're here.
Wonderful. And Brittany, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brittany Gehrig, and I'm a lecturer in the French section at Boise State, but more recently, I was a high school teacher and a junior high teacher. And so I recently made the transition to higher education. So it's been really fun working on this team with a lot of different levels of instruction.
Then I'll introduce our other team members, and I'll save myself for last. So we have Sharon Westbrook, and she is a junior high French instructor. Emily Blackburn and Madeline Rupert, and Madeline and Emily teach high school French. And Emily is actually one of our concurrent enrollment teachers. So Mariah, is she teaching 102 or 200? She's doing the 200 level sequence, is that correct?
She's doing 101 through 201, so 3 semesters.
Wonderful. So yeah, so 3 semesters with us. And my name is Amber Hoy. I'm the director of our World Languages Research Center. And I'm the instructional designer on the team. So I am not a French speaker, though I have learned a lot of French. I did my degree in Spanish, and I work with all the languages in our department. So wonderful to have you here today, and we're going to go over what we're going to cover on the next slide. So what we plan to jump in today is a little bit about the project. What was the impetus? Why did we decide to embark on remixing and revising Francais Interactif, or Interactif, and turn it into Francais Inclusif? Why did we customize the text for Idaho learners? And a question I know that we get a lot is, how did you accomplish this? How did you manage to work in a team, especially across middle school and high school teachers? How did you manage to involve them? And did you get paid for the work? I know that was a question too. So we'll talk a little bit about that stuff. And then we'll have some time for questions and our next steps.
So we're going to launch into, how did we get started? For us, and I know this is true for a lot of departments across the US, we've seen a decline in majors and minors in our languages. And so for the past few years, we've really been trying to work creatively on recruitment and retention. And in fall 2021, we got asked to be part of a unique pilot program where we would take our 4-credit 101 and 102 classes and make them into 3-credit classes. You're probably thinking, why would you do that? That's less contact hours. Students have a lot of 3-credit classes, and when they would see our 4-credit class, they wouldn't add it to their cart when they would register for classes because it was 1 more credit. Perhaps it was an overload. Perhaps they had to pay more. And so we weren't seeing students opt for French. We wanted to eliminate that barrier if possible. So as we started that journey, I, as French sections head, said, well, what are we going to do? Are we going to take out chapters of the book we use right now? How are we going to approach that? And it just seemed like a propitious moment to move to OER. So I got talking with Amber and with another one of our colleagues, Kelly Arispe, and we chatted about it. And we said, it really is a time to eliminate economic barriers as well. We had students telling us, I can't afford the book and I can't afford the online access to the workbook. As much as we had chosen a great book and it was, as financially feasible as we thought possible, we weren't doing enough. And so when I talked with Kelly and Amber, I said, I don't know how to do this. How do we even start this process? And we chatted a lot and we said, this is just a time for opportunity. So while we do it, let's make sure that we reduce identification barriers, as we've called them, and make it inclusive, diverse, and also localized for our learners in Idaho. So our plan was to take, as the last group said, which is really cool, they took Français Interactif. We also did, and we decided to customize it for our students. I loved the last question and the last talk about finances. We got a lot of support on campus. Right away, we wrote our Center for Teaching for Learning, and they gave us funds because how are we going to pay these instructors who don't work on our campus? How are we going to even honor the work we're doing, right? We didn't get a course release, but we did get stipends. We also worked with concurrent enrollment because they see our instructor, Emily. We're going to have another concurrent enrollment instructor. They're going to use this as well. And then we also had buy-in from our college and from our department.
I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we've adapted Francais Interactif to become a Francais Inclusive. So one of the first things Mariah mentioned was localizing the content for Idaho learners. That's something that we really wanted to do in terms of making sure that our students saw themselves represented in the materials. And that can be from the pictures that we use to mentioning buildings like the Global Learning Opportunities Office on campus at Boise State, to including, in the grammar examples, Boise and Idaho, Pacific Northwest locations. A lot of the examples in Francais Interactif included things from the University of Texas. And so we wanted to really start to change that to be more specific to our students and get them thinking about how they can use French in Idaho and in the Pacific Northwest. We transformed the static activities that are in the Francais Interactif workbook and turn them into interactivities. And there are also many new interactive activities. I think as you'll kind of see our journey as we go from 101 to 102, our confidence grew and we have more and more of our own original activities as well. There's non-binary language included in the grammar examples. And that's something that we are dedicated to. And we'll talk to you a little bit towards the end, but we're going to be revisiting the grammar examples as well and making sure that these are really sprinkled throughout the book. We are really trying to help our students realize that in addition to French, they are learning 21st century skills that are so important. And we often talk about this bridge from the classroom to the workplace. And we want students to be able to talk to their employers, even if their employers aren't bilingual, and help them understand the value that they have to bring. And we're starting this early in 101. I think that's something that we realized as a group is that it used to be that we would talk about these things with our French majors, but that might be too late. We want our students to be thinking about that from the moment they walk into our French classroom, right? Career readiness is tied with that. Cultural reflections, we'll be showing you some examples of that, but these are really wonderful, customized for Idaho learners opportunities for the students to reflect in English, or I love the idea from the first presentation in their native language even could potentially be an option, right? And think about how they interact with their world around them and how francophones interact with the world around them, and maybe do some comparisons and contrasting. In-class presentation, so that's something that wasn't really available with the Francais Interactif book. So we have decks for every single module that we can use with our students, and we are polishing those, and those will be available in the summer. And then, just really the Francophone world. The last presentation did a really good job talking about that. So if you haven't had a chance to watch that one in a few weeks, I invite you to go back and check it out. But again, we want our students to know that French is spoken in many different places, and there's lots of beautiful variation, and all of that is wonderful. And while we won't be able to teach you all the variations, we want you to be exposed to that because there are so many places that speak French, and so many people throughout the world that speak French. Last but not least, we're going to show you a more specific example of this here in a moment, but the IPA is, if you're not familiar with that, it's Integrated Performance Assessment. And what that does is it's targeting the 3 modes, okay? So it's targeting interpretive, interpersonal, and presentational. And so we have gone through and we have those available, and they are openly licensed and you can use them with your students.
All right.
And
So,
that, yeah, go ahead, Brittany. Yeah.
so Mariah's going to open up our book here. So we are using Pressbooks to house all of our content, our activities. And so this is essentially the textbook that the students are using. And as you can see on the left-hand side is how the students navigate. So each of our courses have 4 modules. And within those 4 modules, we have 3 sections. So we have a vocabulary, grammar, and then exercises. And as you can see, we're trying to use images that are inclusive and diverse and not just representing France as we've talked about. So, and then you can see here some of the activities as she's scrolling down, but on our next slide, I will talk a little bit more about those. So in this slide, you can see some activities that we use in our homework and our exercises sections. And so we try in each homework assignment, and teachers can decide how to split that up. We happen to have 1 per section, but we use all the modes of communication. So excuse me, I'm gonna turn this sound off. So in each section, we have listening, speaking, reading, writing. We have embedded audio that allows students to hear vocabulary, not just from French people from France, but we often use Forvo or different websites to try and find diverse voices so that they're getting a variety of accents and like we've talked about, vocabulary. And then we use this tool H5P through Pressbooks, which if you're not familiar with that, we could probably try to answer some questions at the end. But this tool allows us to create and modify activities for each section. So we're able to embed content and activities from other openly licensed websites. We don't always have to reinvent the wheel, which is really nice. And we can also create our own activities. So we have, as you can see here, some drag and drop activities, some fill in the blank, audio listening exercises, and we can embed quizzes or true or false questions. And then we can also just use regular old Google Slides to invite students to make a copy of of the slide and then do their own work and turn it into us on our LMS, which right now I'm using Google Classroom, but there's a variety of options out there. And then lastly about this, we have the option to use auto-graded exercises. And I love this because it saves a little bit of time for the instructor, but we're able to, we usually typically do about half and half. So half teacher graded, half auto-graded exercises. And this way, students are able to receive immediate feedback and it's customized feedback. So we can say, okay, if you've almost mastered this either vocabulary activity or whatever they're working on, we can say, okay, 85% you can move on. If you've gotten less than that, we can give them an auto response that says, hey, try again, and kind of work on that mastery path. So that's a super helpful way to give the students feedback and to have them really engage with the material.
Okay, we're going to now move on to how we've customized the project for Idaho learners and for our goals for them. So let's see, I think this is Amber. Uh-oh.
Is my audio any better? Is it still a little bit?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So one of the things that we wanted to do was make it really transparent for our students from the beginning of each module what they are going to be learning. So we have the actual NCSFL can-do statements at the beginning, which are, if you're not familiar with these, I like to think of them as student-friendly learning objectives. It's kind of not the teacher language, it's the actionable real-world things that they're going to be doing. And then we have the 3 modes at the beginning, and these are actually the things that they're going to be doing in the ICA. So again, it's going to target the interpretive, the interpersonal, and presentational skills. And so they know from the very beginning of the module what they're going to be expected to do, hopefully successfully right at the end of each module. And then we have the 21st century skills that we are targeting.
Great. And just one word about that. I mean, when we decided to revamp the curriculum, we got rid of the traditional end of chapter test. So that's the test. That's what we do. We don't have an in-class fill in the blanks anymore. We want them to feel they know how to use French in the real world. And so we build that through our formative activities in class with our slide decks that we've created that accompany the press book. And these aren't quite yet readily available. We are piloting them still. So fall, we piloted 101. Right now we're piloting 102. This summer, these slide decks will be available on a copy-only Google Drive. And their instructors who are interested can get access from us to these slide decks. And they're really fantastic. I got to pilot the 101 last fall, and the activities really follow what's in the press book really well. And in the bottom, our team has created instructor notes. So when you look at the activity and you say, well, what am I supposed to do with this picture? They've made it clear in French and English what you need to do with that slide. As you'll see here, this example, obviously it's tailored to Idaho. Wherever you are, Tennessee, Virginia, you can take this and you can insert the photos that are relevant to you because you'll be able to customize the slide deck.
So I'm going to talk about this aspect of our pilot program called the cultural reflection. And this is a really neat aspect of our OER. This is an idea that Sharon Westbrook, who you saw in the beginning of the slides, she's a junior high teacher. So she kind of implemented our first one, and we've gone with it ever since. But we chose to incorporate a reflection at the end of each module so that students could really take time to explore how the language they're learning will help them today and in the future. And so at the end of the module, they're going to complete this reflection it's in English. The questions are in English, and the material that you see on the screen is in English. And so they're going to explore themes that range from practical advice, for example, how to get a passport in Boise or beyond, how to add a major or a minor at Boise State. But they can also explore language learning tips, such as adding subtitles to an extension to use subtitles on their computer so that they can access more language, change their browser, access google.fr to access search results in the target language. We also urge them to seek out cultural connections close to home. So, for example, we have this wonderful Basque block in Boise. We have a large Basque population. And so we invite them to explore, like, who are these people who speak French and Spanish and Basque in our own community. We also have, for example, the Alliance Française of Boise, where many speakers from different backgrounds come together to meet up and speak French and share cultural perspectives. So students essentially are clicking on these external links, watching videos and accessing these materials on the cultural reflection page, and then filling out their individual response in a Google Doc. And I like to think that these are kind of low stakes assignments in the sense that they're in English, but they're really truly amazing. I had the chance to, and Mariah too, to pilot them last semester and this semester, and the responses that are coming out of them are just awesome. Like, students, they're thinking about other people, how other people live. They're considering studying abroad, which deepens their connection with Boise State University and with the French community, the French speaking community. So it's been really impactful for them to see French in action and just how it can be impactful for them in the long run.
To piggyback on what Brittany's just shared, I want to underscore the importance of these cultural reflections for career readiness. And this is something that's very important to our university as a whole. It's part of our strategic plan. One of our goals in the strategic plan is to improve career readiness and post-graduation outcomes. And they want us thinking about that from day one with our students. And really here, we're not only, it's in English, but part of that is because of this goal. We want to encourage students to reflect on the applicability of what they're doing in French 101. And we also want them to know how to articulate those skills. I feel our students come out of a French major with so many skills, and they're not quite cognizant of what they can do or how they can sell themselves when they go on the market. So this helps prepare them. And in fact, other sections of our department are considering adopting this activity for their languages as well. And so now we're going to move on to the project management. How did we do this? So we've got these people who don't work on our campus and are working with us. and we've really created a great atmosphere. Um, and so what I did in the fall of 2021, talked with Amber and with Kelly, and I said, where should we go? And so we came up with a list of instructors we knew who were using OER already in their classroom successfully and who would likely be excited to work with us. And so we had a few strategies from the get-go. We started in January 2022 with our kickoff meeting. And we invited everyone to share, what is your passion for OER? What do you enjoy doing? Which aspects would you enjoy taking on? Because we had a short timeline. We wanted to create 101 in spring 2022 and use it in fall, because that's when our pilot program with the change of credits would start. So we had to work fast. And so we came up with, first of all, Amber created a wonderful Gantt chart, and that gave us a timeline. Okay, let's think realistically. How long do we have per module if we're going to have 4 modules in a semester? She also helped create this wonderful planning template for each module, because we wanted each module to be consistent. We just set up which parts were going to be key every module and how they would be arranged. Amber, I don't know if you want to say a few words too here. Yeah.
That has been really just key for our success, is that we one of the things we did during our kickoff meeting is that we sat down together and we said, what is your dream textbook? If you could, if the sky was the limit, if money wasn't a factor, if time wasn't a factor, what would be your dream textbook? And then what we did is we came together and infused those elements into this template that we use for every module. And so what happens is that no matter who's instructing the class or the student taking the class, they're getting a consistent instructional experience, right? They after the first few modules, they kind of have a feel for how things are going to go. So every module has the vocabulary, grammar, and then activities, and there's usually three to four. In 102, there's only 3 parts, but in 101, there are a few 4-part sections. And so it's very, very predictable for the students, and that way they don't have any instructional barriers. They kind of just know what's coming for them. And then we typically have given everybody about 3 weeks on the team to complete the module, and that has seemed to work really well. But we try to do a debrief, whether that is meeting together online, in person, or even just asynchronously through a Google Doc and comments. We try to go through with everybody and to see how things are going, or how is the time enough. And then what Mariah and I do is kind of a quality check, if you will. We go through and we just check the links. We check that we try out the interactive activities and just make sure that everything is working before we kind of check the box and move on to the next module. So I think that's what we have on the board. There is a feedback checklist at the end of each module. But yeah, it's just, we've been so fortunate just to have such great team dynamics. I think that really helps. So if you can find an awesome team, I don't really know that I have any suggestions for that, but we have been so lucky to get to work with the middle school and high school teachers as well. It's been invaluable. And I love that they're really helping us to see too, like our students that are going to be coming into our classroom in a year or 2 years, right? So.
Yeah. And to piggyback on that, it's just been a really great experience for us to not feel like we're top down from Boise State telling the area instructors what's what. We're working together, we're collaborating, and I think it's really great also for Boise State to see this connection that can be formed with our instructors. It's also great because we're now going to onboard more concurrent enrollment instructors. We have another instructor who is interested in becoming a concurrent enrollment instructor for us, and that helps the pipeline to come back to the beginning with retention and recruitment. I think it's going to be really key for the sustainability of our French program. I'm really happy that we stuck to the time, because we can now move into the questions, or if you want to know about the next steps. But while we talk about that, I'm going to leave this screen up, and I can also share the links to the press books with you. As I mentioned, the press books are, Amber's got them for you. The press books are already available. The instructor slides and the IPA, the sample assessment program, that'll be available this summer.
Okay, great. Thanks for staying on time. That's wonderful, because then we have more time for a little bit of a Q&A. I'm gonna start off by asking if you could maybe talk a little bit more about how you created activities. You mentioned the H5P. So what exactly is that for people who may not be aware of that, and how do you create activities using that?
So what's really wonderful with Pressbooks is that H5P is built into it. It's a free tool that we can use. And there are pretty simple to use kind of shells for activities. So they're anything from flashcards to quizzes to pronunciation exercises. Something though that we found that has worked really well for us is using the iframe extension. And what that allows you to do is that allows you to basically embed not every web page, but most web pages into the book. And so we can actually take even exercises from other websites and put them into our book. And because they're just living there, where there's not the copyright issues that we might have if we were to copy them and put them in there. And so yeah, Brittany, thank you so much for putting that in. I think you're going to put that in chat. So we can show you what the iframe embedder tool is, but that allows us to put in all sorts of different activities into the book.
Great, thank you for mentioning that. I think some people might have heard of it, but they don't quite know what it is. So I'm going to ask you to give me some examples of, I really like the notion of a career readiness that you were talking about, as well as the concept of that you were talking a little bit about the cultural reflections. Can you give me examples of what an activity might look like for those two concepts?
Sure. Let's see. Brittany, we were talking about this yesterday. Which we were going to share. Was it module 6 or no?
Oh yeah, the cultural reflection for module 6. Yeah.
Let's see if that was the one that we were thinking could demonstrate. So they'll have these activities on the press book that they'll go through. They'll watch the movie. They'll have other links to more information. So this one had to do with Montreal, Senegal, and then Pau. So we tried to divide this module into 3. And then once they've done all those activities and they've learned all this information, they click on the reflection sheet here and it'll ask them to make a copy. And once they've made their copy, they will then answer these questions that get them thinking about what they read and its relationship to Boise, where they are, like for instance, with this first question. And then they also can start thinking about, we have a study abroad program through USAC, and they go to Pau is one of the options. Also Lyon, they have other destinations. Unfortunately, they're pretty France-centric so far. We've tried to encourage them to branch out more, but it's hard to get that started. There are other options for study abroad, but we sort of took Pau as the point of departure in this module. And this gets them thinking about whether or not they would enjoy studying abroad as well. And they hand this in. And then last fall, I took their answers to these cultural reflections and I made them part of in-class discussions. What have you thought about? How did you answer that question? And did you click on the link to our Global Learning's Opportunities Office? It's actually been great also for us with Boise State, because I think when they see how we've made a link across campus, I think that also helped with the funding. It's really, we're helping each other that way.
Right. Well, that leads me to my next question, which is about this concept that you've really exemplified beautifully, and that's localization. So the notion of inclusion should not only be representative of the diversity of the Francophone world, but somehow include the life world of your students, and you've done that nicely. So could I ask you though, oftentimes now that OER, people are really beginning to understand the affordances of OER, that they can actually adapt these materials to their classrooms. Do you have any kind of training resources for other people who might want to use this? Because they say, okay, just like you said, I'm not teaching at Texas, I'm teaching in Idaho. How do I take this activity and adapt it because I live in California? Do you have anything like any teachers' resources where you actually talk about adaptation or localization of your product?
That is a great question. I think, Amber, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I really think once those Google slides, the slide decks are available, it'll be clear in the slide deck how, okay, so here's an opportunity where we used Idaho. You can replace these pictures. You can use them differently. I think it might be a little harder with the press book, right? Amber, I don't know if you could speak to that, the ability to take our press book and what they can do with it.
Yeah, so if you have access to Pressbooks through your institution or through your state, you can actually import our Pressbook, and then it's so easy to customize. You can delete pictures, you can edit text, and I think I have a small blurb about that. If I'm pretty sure we do in the beginning of the book. But that's something I think would be a wonderful summer project, is to maybe put together a little packet for instructors. Carl, I love that. You got me thinking already. I've got some great ideas for that, so that we could help teachers think through how we localize, first of all, to get through that kind of that thought process, and then how they might take the steps to do the same thing for their state, their cities, and their students.
Yeah, I just think that this is what you're showing is like the second generation of OER. So you're playing off of first generation Français interactif, and then you're taking it in a different direction. And now people are seeing, oh, I want to do that too. So it would be really cool if you could give people a little bit of pointers on how to do that. So the process that you kind of touched on that actually, but if you would embed it somehow and let other people play along with you, play the game of OER, I think would be a great idea. So that this could prompt even more localization. Yeah.
That's a great idea. Thank you. Yeah.
So let's see. People are asking questions about asynchronous and synchronous, I guess. So you're answering that. Yeah, do you use this? What's the format in which you use this?
We've been using it in person in the classroom. Since the pandemic, we've all pretty much gone back to in-person teaching. That said, I could definitely see, if we go back to hybrid or if we go back to remote learning, we could adapt this quite easily. We don't currently have any entirely online French available at Boise State. I don't know if Brittany or Amber, if you could add to that, how you see this fitting in for an asynchronous course.
Yeah, as Amber mentioned in the chat, or go ahead, Amber.
Yeah, I'm just going to use a flipped approach. So the students are using the materials outside of class. We want them to be prepped with the vocabulary and grammar and the activities before they come to class, so we can spend time, doing the thing and putting things into practice. So I could definitely see it being adapted for an online text if you were to follow a similar format. For a synchronous online text, asynchronous might take a little bit more work, just because you're going to have to build that in-class experience asynchronously.
Okay. Well, thank you all to the team at Boise State. This is really fascinating work that you're doing.